Gerald Trevon, or just Trevon, had been a friend of my dad's for as long as I've been alive. We moved into Broken Ridge after I was born, and Trevon was one of the first of our neighbors to introduce us to the town. One time, he took us on a tour of the community in his beat-up pickup truck. He even assisted the movers in getting everything into our house. Trevon's 70-something years old and always wears plaid shirts. His demeanor is often carefree, willing to offer a helping hand to anyone in need. He speaks with an accent that makes him sound like a seasoned cowboy with sideburns and a potbelly. No offense to Mr. Trevon, of course. He's the most social person I know. I saw his garage sale sign the other day, so I went over to check it out. When I got out of my car and made my way up his driveway, I could see that his business was fully stocked. He had dozens of antique keepsakes. I also saw a few missing posters stapled to a street lamp. Someone took the time to laminate the posters, plastering them with photos of dogs and cats displayed in color. There was an orange tabby cat on one poster, a Dalmatian puppy on another, and the last one showed a smiling toddler. I sighed and passed them by, focusing on finding Mr. Trevon. He wasn't hard to spot. His plaid shirt, a stark contrast to, well, everything else. Trevon sat in his favorite lawn chair on the front porch, taking sips from a beer can and soaking in the sun. He noticed me walking up and raised his drink. "Toby, my boy, long time no see, huh?" His sunglasses glinted in the sunlight as he smiled at me. "Yeah, it is. How have you been, Mr. Trevon?" I gave him a smile of my own, reaching out to shake his hand. He grasped mine in an iron grip, the skin rough from decades of hard labor. He watched as I took a seat in the other lawn chair, the empty one, next to his. "Same as always, I suppose," he sighed, leaning back in his chair. "My son came by yesterday. We went out to the same restaurant for a couple hours. It's been a year since I've seen him. Can you believe that? How time flies." I nodded, settling into the cushions of the chair. I watched as the clouds glided far above the lawn, shading the greenery and allowing us a reprieve from the sweltering sun. Yeah, time passes pretty fast these days. Trevon turned to me, his hands folded in his lap. "How about you, Tobes? Anything new going on with you?" "No, not really. I bought a dash cam off Amazon, so I guess that's something. Besides that, I don't know." I trailed off with a shrug, not really knowing what else to say. My knees were bouncing gently on the concrete floor, something I usually do when I'm in one place for too long. I'm not the most social person, having spent most of my life keeping to myself for reasons beyond my control. I cleared my throat and focused on enjoying the shade of the trees overhead. We sat in relative silence for what felt like maybe 10 minutes. "Find a girlfriend yet?" I looked over and saw a smirk on his wrinkled face. I told him no, and he chuckled. "Come on, boy, you're a fine-looking young man. I bet countless ladies are swarming you at that store you work at." "Come on, Mr. Trevon. All the girls there are either taken or not interested in dating someone with no experience." This wasn't entirely true, but I didn't tell him that. I let my eyes focus on the middle distance ahead. The house across the street blocked it. It was a fairly large house with a 2-car garage and a wide window on the far left. Mr. Trevon nodded, following my gaze and shifting in his seat. At took him a moment to follow my gaze to the house. He gestured vaguely at it as we sat looking. Something weird is happening at that house. What do you mean? The Weller family across the street lives there. I gave him a confused look, my brows furrowing slightly. What do you mean that something strange is going on over there? Looks fine to me. Trevon let out a sigh and leaned back in his chair. Well, it's just that last night I was taking a walk around the neighborhood. I was coming back here when I looked into their window and, well, I saw him. He pointed at the large window in front of the house where I assumed sat a dining table. From the outside looking in, I could just make out the table and chairs surrounding it. Above it was a crystalline chandelier hanging from a wire or a chain. I could also see a radio as well. I saw him sitting around the table at, I don't know, 10 in the evening maybe. I didn't think too much of it, just figured they were having some family game night or something. Anyway, it was in the morning when I looked out again, and that's when I noticed it. Their car was gone. They always park their SUV in the driveway because their garage is full of junk. I've seen it countless times, cardboard boxes and bicycles and garbage bins and all that, so I thought it was odd that they would pack their car to the brim and then just come back that night without it. I had to admit, it did sound odd that a family would do something like that. I nodded again and leaned back, idly watching a lone squirrel at the edge of the lawn, inching its way down the tree trunk. That's interesting, I guess. Did you see anything else last night? Mr. Trevon took another swig of his beer before setting it back down on the ground. I did not. I only looked over there for a couple of seconds. They were just eating dinner, and I was tired from walking all evening. Huh, was all I could say after Mr. Trevon finished. Trevon put his hands on his armrest and stood up. His joints popped and he sighed as he stretched his arms. He glanced at his cluttered driveway, which by now had a handful of people in it. I'm going to go greet the customers. You're welcome to stay, if you like. I thanked him and watched as he welcomed the newcomers, welcoming them to his property. He took some time to talk quietly to a solemn-looking couple, occasionally glancing at the missing posters at the edge of the property. It wasn't until the next night that I was in his neighborhood again. I had the night off from work, so I didn't want it to go to waste. I ended up taking a walk to Mr. Trevon's neighborhood. It was cool that evening, so I had to wear a windbreaker. I saw the occasional squirrel darting around and plenty of small birds flying overhead. I hadn't even noticed that I had passed by the Weller's house until something moved in my periphery. I turned to see the kitchen window was lit up, casting a warm yellow light into the room. Underneath the bright chandelier was the table, but the seats were empty. I could see a man and a woman on opposite sides of the table. The other two seats had two children also facing each other. Even though the young boy's back was facing the window, I could tell that he wasn't moving. It was as if there were an uncanny reenactment for a family dinner. The family was completely still, devoid of the activity one would usually expect to see. The mother and father didn't move their mouths or gesture with their hands. The children didn't shift in their seats or anything. It was as if someone came in and set up mannequins resembling the family at the dining room table and left them there. I slipped my phone from my pocket and began to record the scene. I zoomed in on the father to get a better look. After a second, the image cleared and I could see that there was no expression on his face. I looked at the other family members and saw the same lack of expression. Keeping my phone focused on the scene, I looked around the neighborhood. I was the only one out there. Many of the houses had dark windows, and the few that weren't had no activity inside. The only thing I actually saw were the dark silhouettes of squirrels and birds fluttering overhead. A dog in the distance, far away, kept barking, its sound echoing across the quiet night air, broken by the rhythmic chirping of crickets. The occasional gust of wind broke the stillness of the forest, sending the dark leaves on the trees rustling. I kept my phone trained on the window for another 30 seconds before I saw it again. I thought I imagined it, but the chandelier was flickering, a ghostly dance of light and shadow. Their faces, blank and frozen like masks, did not show any perspective reaction. As I kept filming, the lights went out on their own. A moment later, the room was once again visible, but there was something different now. The family had vanished, as if they were never there. I slowly lowered my phone, my mind processing what I had just seen. In less than a minute, I had witnessed this family of people not moving an inch, then disappearing after the chandelier started short-circuiting. I'll admit, my first thought after processing what had just happened was, well, that was pretty cool. I pocketed my phone, taking one last glance at the dark window over the Weller house, and hastily walking back the way I'd came. I could feel my chest tightening from anxiety, slowly setting in. I was aware of every noise that I was making as I made the long walk back to my home. I secured the deadbolt on my front door and secured the door chain. Turning to face my house, my chest tightened a little more at how dark it was. Kicking off my shoes, I flipped on every light switch, moving through the place with haste. In less than a minute, my apartment was like a beacon to the outside world. I tossed my coat onto the bed and flopped onto it, taking a deep breath. After a few moments, my heart slowed to a steady rhythm. The tightening in my chest loosened. I rolled onto my back and stared up at the ceiling. This evening had really messed me up, no doubt about it. I hadn't felt this kind of fear in a long time. When I calmed down, I pulled my phone out and opened my gallery. I opened the recording and reviewed it at low volume. I noticed an old radio that seemed to belong back in the 80s or 90s. It was at the back of the room, but the family members obscured most of it. I only saw the top edge of the radio and the antenna protruding from it. In the end, I sent the video to one of my only friends at work. I also sent the video to Mr. Trevon, though I know he won't be able to get back to me until tomorrow. I need someone to verify what I was seeing. This is the only reason I'm writing this and posting it here. I want to know what I saw tonight, so I'm requesting you guys' help. If this is a prank for some kind of show on Prime or whatever, then they probably got the reaction they wanted. I don't know why they would choose a small town in the Midwest, though. Broken Ridge does not get much attention with national publicity. If it wasn't fake or a setup, then I'm not sure what it was. What do you guys think? You're still here. Thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague here. Always a pleasure to see all my new and old viewers coming by for another one of my spooky tales. If you'd like to support the show, you can always take part in one of our channel offers through Fume or Aura, or you can just click on another video when they come up. I'd really appreciate it. For our newer viewers, we also have lots of playlists and other things if you'd like to get caught up. I know some of my series have been going on for quite a while. If you'd like to get my latest book, there's a link down below that'll take you to my Amazon page. Towesey Homestead just came out, so if that's something you'd like to get your hands on, go ahead and have a look down there. If you'd like a signed copy, you can go ahead and email me from my email address on the site, and I'll get with you about shipping information and ship you a signed copy. If you'd like to support the channel in a more monetary fashion, we also have membership through YouTube, and we've got a Patreon that you can get the information for in the description. We have lots of tiers and everything to suit your needs. Patrons that support on the $10 tier, that's our Ghostly Reader tier, get a book anytime I write one, signed and on their doorstep. As you may have noticed, there's a list of patrons and members on the screen, and I'd like to personally thank every one of them for taking a hand in the future of this channel. Well, that's enough for tonight. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.